Great. So yes, today I'll be talking about how I got to grips with a large code base. My name's Aishah Omar. Right, let's get into it. So a bit about me. So I am a career switcher. So I studied something completely unrelated to computer science. It was European Social and Political Studies at UCL. And a few years after I graduated, I joined Founders and Coders, which is, well, at the time I think it was a boot camp, and I was part of the 20th cohort. That was where I learned to do the majority of my coding, and I also attended several codebar sessions and a few as a coach in recent years. So it's nice to be able to give back and give a talk like this. So yes, for the past almost 4 years now, it's flown by so quickly. I've been a software developer at Software, which is a um, consultancy in North London. Um, yeah, so in this talk, I'm hoping to share what I found useful when tackling large code bases and some of the lessons I learned from it. So one of the things about working in software is you work on projects, and some of them are quite short ones, but some of them are also quite long projects that have been going on for years. So in my first role at Software, when I first joined, it was spring of 2021. Everyone was still working remotely at the time. First week on the job, I got put on the project, and this code base was the largest I had ever interacted with. It, I think, it had over 2,000 files, and I just felt so overwhelmed. Like I didn't even know where to start. Um, so yes, there are a few things I learned, a few tools I used to try and tackle those first tickets I got given, um, and slowly chip away at understanding what was happening. I won't be using the repository I worked on at the time. Instead, I'll be using two open source GovUK repositories as examples, which are a little bit smaller, but still have about 600 to 700 files in them. Great. So some useful tools. First, I'm going to jump to a website. This is the GovUK Design System website. Make it a tiny bit larger. So I have this is what's currently hosted. I have the local version running locally on my computer. This is what it looks like. And let's just say it's your first week on the job. One of the things that days after they have asked you to do is to change some text in this website. Let's just have a look. Let's maybe we'll go to patterns, and we can go to dates, for example. And let's just say we want to change the text here after select a date. So let's jump back to so one of the first things you can do is when looking at an unfamiliar repository is try to understand the folder structure. Most of the time, I hope at least, folders are structured in a way that makes sense. You might see an SLC, you might have tests all in a separate folder. If there's an API, there might be an API folder. So the hope is the folder structure will give you a hint as to where you need to look if you need to make changes or if you're trying to understand what's happening. The next tool I was going to show you was the find search tool. So if you're using a code editor, there are several ways you can search through a code base to figure out what you need to do, to figure out where things are. So let's jump to the code now. This is the Gov UK Design System repository. I'll just make it slightly larger. So on the side, we can see there's a folder structure. So there's config, data, docs, lib, src, and more. So in this instance, if we wanted to change the text of something, I'm actually going to make it a bit easier and just have this on the side because it's sometimes helpful. Right, so let's look through src, which usually stands for source. That's usually where a lot of things are. So, okay, there are a few folder names. I've not really clicked on anything yet. Could maybe our the information be within data? It looks like there's only one file in there, so I guess not. Let's look back at SOC. So if we look at the names of the folders, it looks like some of them match the title of the headers. That's quite useful. So we have accessibility there, we have get started, we have styles. That's promising. We're in patterns, so I guess I'll look in patterns and see where we go. Okay, it looks like it matches. And yeah, okay, this is helpful. Now, if I want to go into dates, I'll go into dates and okay, there's a markdown file. And I'll click on that markdown file. So just by looking at the folder structure, I've managed to sort of decipher where a file could be and where I need to make changes. So it should be running. So I'll just put hello codebar here. And it'll take a while to reload. So I'll leave that for a while. So something else you could also do is, of course, just search the string using the search tool. So just say I'm going to look for selected date. Go here, go to the search icon and type in selected date. Okay, so this file came up. That's helpful as well. Sometimes you can't rely on search because, for example, if we're looking for your service, just a few paragraphs below, there's actually a secret non-breaking space. So if we type in your service, we won't find it. And also, for example, these I think aren't actually apostrophes, they are a different symbol. So sometimes you won't be able to search through things like that. And sometimes content will come from elsewhere and they're just templated into a file. Oh, so that's exciting. Hello Codebar is now on the screen. We've managed to make that change. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. Okay, so that's the folder structure and the find and search tool. So sometimes when you're trying to understand what's happening in Codebase, maybe you don't have a specific goal. There are two things you can do. You can either pick something specific on the page and kind of go upwards to see how it works, or you start right from the top and go deeper. So I suppose what I mean by that is if we go back, sorry, there's a lot of jumping in this. So for example, the page has a cookie banner. So in this example, I'm going to be starting by just looking at this cookie banner. I don't know how it's displayed there. So one of the things I'm going to do is I can click on this bar. On this bar, you can search for files by name. So on the side here, you are searching the contents of a file. And here, which you can also get to by clicking on Control P, I can just type in cookie and any file that has cookie inside the name will appear. So here I want to look at the cookie banner. So I'll click on cookie banner and the file opens. And okay, so I can see where the cookie banner is, where the code for the cookie banner is, but how does it actually appear on the page? I can't really see anything that's using this class here. So what I can do is I can press Control click, and I'll make this a bit bigger. And it's showing me, okay, this cookie banner is referenced 3 times within this file and twice within this application.mjs file. Let's look at this application.mjs file. Double click on that, and we can see, okay, so this is where it gets created. This is where the cookie banner gets loaded in. And there's also something related to it, the cookies page, and that also gets created in this file. So sometimes you'll be able to just search through things, control click, and follow the chain up or follow the chain down, and it can help you understand what's going on. So a few more things you can do. You don't have to use VS Code for this. I know there are other code editors around, but something useful it can do is if you hover over a function, it can show you a description of what that function does. So we have the get consent cookie function, and I'm hovering over it, and it's showing us what the function does. So in this case, it returns the user's cookie preferences. And it also tells us what happens if the content cookie is malformed or not there. If I hover over is valid consent cookie, it also tells us what goes into the function and is quite helpful that way. So sometimes control click isn't as helpful as you like. So if we look at create all button, there are a lot of buttons on this page. I don't know which button it is. Let's try and hover over it. That's not really telling me much. It's just telling me Gov UK front end, a different repository provides no types. So if I try control click into it, it goes to this page, which doesn't tell me anything about button. But if I go right click, and if I go to source definition, now if we look at the path, we notice I'm inside node modules and I'm inside Gov UK front end, which is where this component comes from. And here I can see the class, I can see the parameters that go into it, I can see how it works, what event listeners are on, what functions are available. So sometimes you just need to go a little bit further if control clicking does not work. Okay, so jumping back to the slides. So another tool which I really found helpful was Git Lens. So this is the VS Code extension which can show you who edited a certain line of code, or it will show you what the commit message was when that line was changed, and you can see other changes that were made within the same commit. It's quite a useful tool and has helped me, especially when there are descriptive commit messages, to understand why a change has been made or what changes had to be made for a certain feature as well. And something else we'll also look at are existing tests within a code base. So I'm going to jump to a different code base for this. It's also a Gov UK code base. It is the IPv core front. So I have this string helper.ts file that I've opened, and there is a function here called kebab case to Pascal case. I'm new to the job. I don't entirely know what it's doing. I can have a look at the functions that it calls. It calls capitalized first letter, the function's name quite well. So I'm assuming it will capitalize the first letter of what's there. It looks like it does. That's good. And then I get to, it puts camel case, it wraps the input within another function, camel case. And if I look at the function camel case, I get this regex, which can be quite difficult to understand at first glance. If you're not very experienced with regexes, I don't use them that often. So an example is given here, form tracker to form tracker. Okay, let's see what else I can try and find out. So I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to find all references to see where kebab case to Pascal case is used within the repository. I can see it's used within nunjux.ts. Okay. I can also see, that we have a test file, a string helper.test file. So I'm going to have a look at that, and great, there are tests. So there are quite a few test cases that help me understand how this function is used, what the expected outputs are, which is quite helpful, as I've already mentioned. Something else is usually when there are tests, sometimes they will have quite descriptive messages as to what they are testing, and that is used sometimes to figure out the feature, how the function should be reacting and what you expect it to do. So for example, there are a lot of tests here. It says, picking on one, this says it selecting the download link redirects the browser to the Apple App Store. Okay, that's helpful. And I can go through other tests and their descriptions to figure out what the expected behavior is. And also within the test, you can see how they are testing this behavior. So which functions are called, and how they check the expected response. Now, I also mentioned GitLens earlier. Let's have a quick look at that. So this is translation.json. It just has a lot of information and a lot of text. So if I hover over this line, this is quite hard to see. It's low contrast, but there's a name, a time like 6 months ago, and there's also a commit message here. If I hover, GitLens is showing me the commit here. And if I click on the commit, it will open up on the side and it tells me, okay, 2 files were changed in this commit. So this commit changed it was fixing the apostrophe. So this symbol here. If I knew which specific line I was looking at, I can also, for example, if I click on the top of the file under authors, then git blame appears, which shows me when every line was changed, and what the commit message was. So I can see a history of the file, and if certain commits are relevant to what I'm looking for, I can just dig deeper into that as it pops up, and I can figure out what's happening. On the side, there's also a file history. So if we don't want to use a git blame, we can just look at all of the commits that have affected this file over time. Right. So back to the slides. And the next thing I found really useful when starting was asking questions of my team members. It might seem quite obvious, but um, sometimes it is the fastest way to figure something out. I think especially when you're starting out, you don't have to come in already knowing everything. People expect you to take time to learn, and you can ask questions various ways. Sometimes you're assigned someone to help you. Um, Sometimes there'll be a Slack channel. I still post on Slack channels asking for help to see if someone else will definitely know the code base better than I was. If so, help is available, and it is also your teammates are a tool that you should use. So lessons I learned. So one of the struggles I found when I was first starting out was I felt a need to understand every single line of every single file, and it was really stressful. And I think coming to that understanding that you don't need to understand absolutely everything, you need to know it enough to do what you need to do. And understanding will come in occasionally in drops, and occasionally you just get a click and suddenly you understand. Um, yeah, you don't have to be a perfectionist and um, understand every single thing immediately. Lastly, for all of you who might be quite new, uh, believe in yourself. You've got this.
Okay, we've got some questions starting to come in. When starting to work on a new code base with lots and lots of files, how long would you generally spend exploring the way it works?
Oh, that's an excellent question. It usually varies with whether I've been given a ticket for that code base immediately. Well, actually, it depends what the ticket is as to how deeply I need to understand it. And also sometimes it's um, very much depends on how long I know I'm going to be on a project. If I know it's going to be quite a long one, I'll take maybe half half a day to a day if I'm by myself, but usually I will ask a colleague who has been on that team or is currently on that team just to give me a quick, maybe 15 minutes or half an hour overview of the main things about the code base, what I need to know about after I've gone through the README steps. And then that will help sort of direct where you explore and how much you need to explore.